Well, hey everybody, this is Don with the Vlog of Many Things, and with me is...
I'm Tom.
Kenko.
And I am Glenn.
Tonight we have Glen Dahlgren.
Yep.
See, I pronounced it on the first try.
Nice.
And I don't have a cracky mic tonight.
Oh my God, yeah, you're right.
It wasn't plugged in all the way to my mic next to me.
Fix it just for me.
That's right. Want to make sure it was extra special.
Yeah.
Tonight, welcome to the Vlog of Many Things, and we're going to have probably a busy night tonight. St. Guthbert, how you doing? Thank you for tuning in. And Scott Mulder, thank you. We have Glenn here tonight. He's going to be talking about his books, his history, Unreal 2, Wheel of Time, Deathgate, Tandy color computers, which the archaic dinosaur next to me did not have. And lots of cool stuff. And then later on, we're going to get into lawsuits against Hasbro. Go Lawyers. And AI and Harper Collins, because I reached out and talked to my Harper Collins rep, who I liaison with for book covers. So that's right. Fugly, how you doing? Yes, it is going to be the Three Stooges theme. Ty, how you doing? Glenn, tell us a little about yourself. Sorry about that.
Sure, absolutely. So I am a computer game designer, and I'm an author. And I actually, as I warned you, I'm thinking about just giving you the pitch. I do a lot of book signings. So mostly in my area, in the Bay Area, you'll find me at Barnes & Nobles. You'll find me at Half Price Books, especially over the holiday season. I have every weekend booked. And so I have a pitch. It's like a 3-minute pitch. It sounds like a pitch. I'm warning you ahead of time that I know it's a sales pitch, but I'm going to do it anyway because it's probably the best way for me to introduce
you. You know what? Pitch along.
As long as you're ready, then I'll go ahead and do it. So I am an award-winning fantasy author. But I'm actually in Concord in the Bay Area, but I was in Miami a couple of years ago where I was at the Reader's Favorite Awards. And that's where I won these babies. I won medals. I won gold for the first 2 books of the series. But not only that, I won the Dante Rossetti and a bunch of others. And I have a lot of visual aids on my table, so I tend to point to things as I'm doing it.
I used to be a book publisher, and those are not any half-ass awards. Those are actually legitimate, really vetted out awards. Congratulations! That tells
I appreciate you saying that. Yeah, it's I'm really proud of them. And the reason that I'm telling you this is not, hey, look how awesome I am. I just want you to know that my books come pre-vetted, meaning that if you kind of like fantasy, chances are you're gonna love my books. Just like to get that out of the way. So let me tell you about the world. The world is ruled by the gods of order, and they're divided in different aspects like good and evil, law and war, and a bunch of others. They all have temples, and the temples pull from the populace and make their priests. It's really good to be a priest. You get to do all the cool magic and everything. It's not so good to be the people left behind. They're what's known as faithless. And they have to pay gold up to the temples. They don't pay enough, they get auctioned off, become property of the temples. It sucks for them. Now, chaos isn't gone. Order locked it away in a vault, and it's been calling to its followers too. But everybody that shows up trying to free it, Order kills, leaving thousands of years of bones outside of this vault. However, there's a prophecy. Someone's going to show up, open that vault, release chaos, and change everything. But it's also said that the only one that can open that vault is a god. That is the story of the Child of Chaos. This book took me 20 years to write. Now, it's not the only thing I was doing during those 20 years. I'm also a computer game designer. And I've designed games like Star Trek Online and Wheel of Time and Unreal 2. Even Glee. I've done it all. But in that time, I got to work with world-class fantasy authors like Robert Jordan from Wheel of Time. There's Wheel of Time, too. Margaret Weiss and Trace Hickman from Deathgate and Dragonlance.
Nice.
Terry Brooks from Shannara, and even Piers Anthony. You guys know who Piers Anthony is.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of people I do my pitch to, they've never heard of Piers Anthony.
Oh,
But I grew up reading Piers Anthony. In high school, he was like my fantasy author hero.
And
so
he
when I
never stopped writing.
when I finished that book,
He had so many books. My God.
oh, I know, but you have to be of a certain age to remember Piers Anthony.
Yeah, true.
Even though he's still writing, you still, yeah. But when I finished that book, I really wanted him to read it. So I asked him, and he said, I'm not going to have time to read your book. Even if I did, you wouldn't like what I have to say about it because no one ever does. I said to him anyway. He read it in one night. And the next day, he sent me this review. He loved it so much that he gave me my first cover quote. I don't know if you can see it, but it's
Read it off. Go ahead.
it says, this is what fantasy fiction should be.
Ooh,
Nice.
Which is pretty
and
awesome.
Piers Anthony.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a
Yeah,
That's a seal. That's a
I
seal.
don't know. I don't know if you've ever had your childhood hero tell you did something right, but man, it laid me out. I mean, it became a pivotal moment in my life. That and when I won those medals, it's like, all right, maybe I'm on the right track. Maybe I'm doing something good. So there's a character in this book. His name is Dauntes. He's a priest of war. He's like an action hero. Everybody loves him. He's such a fan favorite. I wrote the prequel about him. And this book has actually won more awards than that one. So this became such a critical part of the series that you can read these in either order, but you need to read both before moving on to the House of Prophecy, which just last year won the American Fiction Award. And then the finale. It actually just came out this year. The signings I'm doing right now are the launch tour for The Realm of Gods. I think it's my best book yet. The reviews are coming in.
Is that the finale?
It is. It's the finale of the series. The reviews are calling it a masterpiece. Their words, not mine. But in the time that it's been out, it has it has received both the American Fiction Award for this year and a medal from Reader's Favorite.
Nice.
So there's only one more thing I need to tell you, and that is I was doing a podcast about the Wheel of Time game. Actually, it was on the Dusty Wheel. And there was someone listening to that podcast and was the executive producer of the Wheel of Time TV series. He contacted me, and together we relaunched the game to coincide with the launch of the TV series. But in so doing, he is now evaluating my books for a potential TV series or movie.
Excellent.
Not only that, my old boss at Legend, where I made those games, is now head of games at Netflix. And he's shopping my books at Netflix. So you never know.
Never know.
cool.
Well, congratulations.
So that's my pitch.
We'll be able to say we knew you when.
That's so the way I pitch the books at that point is, hey, you never know. I'm here today. You came in today on the one day I'm signing first edition copies of these things before they blow up.
Nice.
Kind of cool.
Nice.
But
Now-
it's a pretty effective pitch. I mean, I'd say maybe 50% of the people who hear it buy the books.
Nice.
Yeah, and because a lot of authors call themselves best-selling. I mean, when I had my publishing company, that was just someone who had one book sell. They consider themselves best-selling. But to have those type of awards attached to yourself, and then have someone like Piers Anthony, basically agree to give you a quote for your own cover, that's some real credentials.
Yeah, I mean, given that not a huge amount of people have heard of me in terms of my books, I've been doing this for about 5 years.
Yeah.
It makes a big difference having those awards and having a luminary tell people that, hey,
real quick,
pay attention.
Scott Mulder asked, where do we get the goodies? Where can people find you? You're on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, where?
So the best place to get signed copies from me, and they're not any more expensive, is just go to my website, which is mysterium.blog. Just click on the store.
Do me a favor, drop me a PM real quick on Facebook if you can, and give me the link, and I'll put it in a banner down below, and that way everybody else. Oh, you got it?
I got it. I'll send it over to you right now.
All right,
That'd be great.
perfect.
Because I don't think I actually have you set up on Facebook DM
I'm
yet.
going to PM it to you.
Yeah, that is Mysterium.blog. That's what it translates to. But my store is just one click away from there. It has everything. And actually, what it also has is this, which is a short story this is half. I have 0, I have 1, and this is half. This is between them. But you can read this on its own as well, and you can get this for free. You can download it for free as an ebook, just for clicking, just for visiting my website.
Nice.
All right, we got you down below.
Awesome. Yeah. Come
Now,
visit.
yeah, definitely swing by if you can. Give the man some business. I'll tell you what, selling books is hard enough, but it sounds like you have a lot of, for use a term a lot of people aren't familiar with, you got a lot of backfill behind you, which means you got a lot of vetted work behind you. You've had people read your book. You obviously put the work into it because your cover work is beautiful.
Thank you very much. I actually work with a studio in Ukraine to make those covers.
Gotcha.
I loved them. They were affordable, but they also had unlimited changes. And so I'm an art director. I mean, from all my games, I've done art and design, but I want them the way I want them. So it takes a little while to get there, but once I get there, I'm really happy with the end result.
Nice. Now, you sent me via email kind of like a background about you. Okay. And I was reading your background, and you mentioned that in high school, and I think you mentioned in college, you had a game studio you operated, large, one of the biggest. Explain it. What's that's all about?
So in high school, I got my first computer, which was a Tandy Color computer. And I wrote some games for that. I actually won a couple of contests in the magazines that were for there. So I figured maybe I knew what I was doing. And so I started writing adventure games. And I started working for another company called Prickly Pear Software. And then when I went into college, I was like, you know what? I can do this. Not only can I write the software, but I can sell it too. And so, but I had a great relationship with Prickly Pear. They actually got me a great ad rate with the major magazine that was there, the Rainbow magazine. And I quickly became a huge player in that space. I actually had the inside front cover of the magazine for my ads. And then I was there all the way to the end of the life cycle of the computer. And so that's why I said at the end, I was the biggest company left because there weren't that many left. But I was on the inside front cover. And so everybody knew. And actually, when I started having other people write for me, filling out my roster of games, then I knew that I was doing really well. But then
Days
the
of
computer
floppy.
died. Absolutely. I actually think I have a couple here.
Well, I'm gonna date. Yep.
And the Contras.
That's when you'd go to the computer store and they'd have them hanging from the turnstile.
Yep.
Right.
You'd spend like $5 and get a game and load it with the 2 floppies or one.
Yep. And they were, a photocopied one piece of paper with the floppies inside. That's what you expected when you bought one of those things.
That was damn good games back then too.
Yeah.
I mean, you were shit when you went to the game shop or because there was no game stores. You went to the computer store to get to get that stuff.
Yeah.
But
actually, you got most of it mail order. That's just the way. That's the way most of those companies worked.
See, I got lucky. Our local place had a lot of those games.
Did they have third party? So like Tandy, Radio Shack, they carried theirs and only a select few other like third party and almost none. And those usually had to mail order them from them as well.
Probably, but I wasn't exposed. I mean, to me, it was just the magic of it, of being able to go in and you kind of, I think I had more the mentality, you just got what you chose. Whatever was on there, that's what you had to choose from type thing.
Yeah. And my ecosystem was all about the magazines. So you had to have a really splashy ad. You had to have something, full color that really attracted attention. And that drove all of our sales.
Wow.
Yeah, because the Tandy was one of the first color computers.
Mm-hmm.
Because I remember back in the day, my dad had an Osborne, which was the old clunky suitcase computer.
We were really dating
down screen had
ourselves,
a 3.5-inch, orange.
I remember those things.
Yeah. Now, you worked on Unreal 2. What exactly did you do with Unreal 2?
So, I'll just say this. This is Unreal 2.
Yeah.
I'll say this. If you go to my website, I have a lot of behind-the-scenes articles that talk about what a disaster they were until they finally weren't. So if you have questions about Unreal 2, if you have questions about Wheel of Time or Deathgate or even Glee Forever, I've written up articles about all of those that are a lot of fun. Unreal 2, I'll be perfectly honest, I wanted nothing to do with that game when we first started developing it.
Which one?
That was because Unreal 2.
Really?
Yes, because it wasn't my baby. It was the baby of Mike Verdu, who was a really talented guy. I mean, he's the one who's actually off in Netflix land right now.
But I heard with Unreal 2, real quick, with Unreal 2, that was a total redesign, a new engine and everything.
Oh, yeah. Well, they were updating their engine. It was the new version of the Unreal Engine at that point. The reason that they wanted Legend to make Unreal 2 is because we did so well with Wheel of Time. We had a really great relationship with them. We actually, in fact, when I showed the prototype that I put together for Wheel of Time to Tim Sweeney, he said later that's when he realized that licensing was a market. I mean, a viable business opportunity because other people were doing things with this engine that he didn't envision. And that was really cool. That was a nice thing to hear. So our relationship with them, we are actually helping them build tools and fix bugs early on. And so they wanted to entrust us with their major franchise, Unreal. However, after Wheel of Time, I kind of wanted to do something else. I wanted to move off and make something on my own, but Unreal 2 was already in motion by the time I was finishing up Wheel of Time. So it really only was about, I don't know, halfway through the development cycle for Unreal 2. Things were happening. And if you read that article, you'll see what's happening. At about that time, Mike Verdu left the company. And so he kind of left the project, without a leader, without a designer. And so I had to step in. So it ended up being, I think it was a really fun game. But the expectations for it were so high that it was impossible to meet them.
Oh, but so you guys had big shoes to fill after Unreal.
No question. And there was we had to ship. And so in order to fulfill all the promises that had been made, like factions and even multiplayer, drivable vehicles and all those things, we got some of that stuff in there, but mostly we had to focus on a good single player experience, which was kind of what we convinced Epic was their brand for the Unreal line. Well,
because wasn't Unreal was kind of butting heads with Halo?
No.
Really?
Unreal was butting heads with, I want to say, Quake. So Quake Arena and Unreal Tournament, those were the ones that were going head to head at the time.
Gotcha.
And so that's what actually they were focusing on. They were focusing on Unreal Tournament, which was their sort of multiplayer approach. And we were focusing on the single player storytelling. I mean, we were really well known for storytelling at that point.
Yeah, Unreal's got a hell of a storyline to it.
Right. It was a lot of fun. I mean, it wasn't my story, but I tried to tell the story that was there as well as I could.
Yeah.
And then after the fact, once we had shipped, we actually added multiplayer onto it. We had the drivable vehicles, we had the placeable turrets and everything. And it was great. It was called Unreal 2 XMP, and it was very well received, but it was too little too late. At that point, that ship had sailed, and we weren't going to see. And Infogram Atari at that time was shutting down. They shut down all.
What was your role? Were you a storyline writer? Were you a programmer? What were you?
No, I was the creative director.
Creative director. Okay. All right.
Yeah, for almost all my projects, I was, except the early ones, I've been creative director. So that means that I'm designing it, I'm writing the dialogue, I'm directing the art, I'm directing I'm working with the tech lead to direct the programmers. I'm directing the level designers. I'm even directing the voice. I did actually a bunch of voice acting in my games, and so that's one of the reasons I did all of my own audiobooks. So if you get my audiobooks, you'll hear my performances in.
Well, I can see the carryover. I can see how writing can help you with art direction, but also art direction can help you with writing, because writing is very difficult. Because I write also, and it's especially when you get large epic level storylines, it's hard to keep track of all those characters, how they interact, and do it in a way that page 5 makes sense to page 255. You know,
Well, you make an adventure game, and then you'll understand, what that process is like. It's really interesting because that puzzle, that thing that you drop in the first few moments, might end up using the puzzle at the end. So keeping that whole thing in your head is something actually I have a lot of experience doing, and it's a lot of fun. I mean, that's something that I excel at, and so yeah, absolutely, I think that was a skill that I was able. But also creating stories. I mean, everything I have done in my entire career has been about storytelling.
Yeah,
and I got wonderful opportunities to tell stories in other people's worlds. So, like, telling Wheel of Time, that's an entirely new storyline inside the Wheel of Time universe. Now, Deathgate. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to ask about Wheel of Time. Now, you were the creator director for Wheel of Time video game, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, kind of a dumb question. All right. How does Greg or Glen Dahlgren get a job being a creative director, doing Wheel of Time, Unreal 2, Deathgate? I mean,
good question.
How?
Well, the answer is you don't get a job being creative director for those things. You get a job being a junior programmer, fresh out of college. So yes, that's what I was doing. On those early Legend Adventure games, I was programming. So like Spellcasting 101, Time Quest, Spellcasting 201, and a few of the others. So but the thing is, if you get inside of a small group, sort of a small company, where they want to grow, and you're there early, and you have talents and skills that you can grow into those roles, you do.
Gotcha.
We had a time when we were scouring the world for more designers, and we couldn't find them. And what we did do is the first game that we made, where we allowed people inside the studio who weren't designers to try their hand at it, was Gateway 1, which was based on Frederick Pohl's books. And so that was Mike Verdu and Michael Lindner, myself, and a few others. Of those people, Michael Lindner and Mike Verdu and myself, those are the ones that really took to it. And so after that, I actually have the sequel to that. This is Gateway 2 Homeworld. Mike Verdu and I designed this together. And
Gotcha.
So it was sort of our stepping stone. And then the next one after that was Deathgate. And that was my first solo project. So it happened over time. I mean, I had to get the trust of the company. I had to get the trust of the teams. I was actually building my own teams, hiring artists, hiring programmers. And so by that time I was running the project.
And as you can see, several of our people in here are actually dating themselves. Yeah. Kim Winston says, LOL, Spellcasting 101. That's a blast from the past.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, that's way back there. But Deathgate came in for around under $300,000. And that dates me.
No.
Because, yeah.
I played the hell out of that game.
Well, that's fun. I'm glad you found it fun. But then you fast forward to my next project, which was Wheel of Time, and I think that was like $3 million, something like that.
A little bigger.
Yeah. And but that was one that we actually had to go out. I mean, so Legend was acquired by Random House for a period of time, and that's when they wanted us to do low-cost adventure games, pretty much the same level as Deathgate and Xanth and some of the other ones that we did. And I tried to convince them that that's not what we should be doing. I mean, adventure games were kind of not on the cutting edge. The market was not growing, and so but Doom was showing us the future. And so I said, we need to do a first-person shooter. And I don't like any of your licensees, so let me go after Robert Jordan, even though he was being published by Tor. And so they got a little sparkle in their eye. And I think it was because they would love to have taken him away from Tor. But who knows, But they gave me the opportunity, and I pitched it, and I ended up being able to make that game. And so that kept us on the map for a while. We became known as a first-person shooter studio.
Now, you also said that you played D&D, or you played D&D. Dumb question. What would your opinion be of a first-person dungeon crawler?
Oh, I played a few of those. Like
Yeah,
I think
there's
Dungeon
a
Master.
few. Yeah, there's a
would-
few out there, but I mean one that, I hate to put it like this, but done very well.
Well, I mean, that would be nice, I guess. But there have been sort of. It depends on what you mean by that, because there have been first-person dungeon crawlers. I think actually, Ultima Underworld was like the first-person, the first
Yeah.
real-time
series.
3D experience. But there have been others, and mostly RPGs. Well, I mean, D&D is an RPG, but are you saying like a really well done first person in today's market that's not third person, because most of them are third person?
Most of them are third person now.
Right.
I'm a big lover of first person games.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I just like the experience. So, but now going back to Chronicles of Chaos, if I can, real quick.
Sure. I'd love to.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Because you told us that it took you 20 years to write the first book.
Right.
And I think that probably out there in the audience, there's a few aspiring writers. I know I've started a book and it's kind of lingered. So when you say like 20 years, it's like, oh, there's hope for me.
A lot of people find inspiration in that.
How does that work? That
right.
You tell us how that process works of taking 20 years to write a book, and how do you get it? When you kind of get tired of it, and then it's been sitting pigeonholed, as Mark Twain used to put it, for too long. Talk to us about that, because I think the audience would probably be interested.
Sure.
In that.
Great question.
Absolutely. So let me tell you how the idea came about for that first book. So I was actually about to pitch Wheel of Time. We were going to a bunch of different publishers, and one of them was Activision. And I was about to pitch Wheel of Time to Activision, and I got a call the night before that said, we like the game, but we don't want the license. So we need you to pitch us a version of this thing without Wheel of Time attached to it. And so I was like, oh, well, what the hell? So I have a night to come up with a different premise. And I did it. I was actually really impressed with the fact that I could come up with something that was reasonable in that amount of time. The next day, I pitched it, and the pitch went really well. They really liked it. But we ended up going with GT. And because it made more sense, GT was the publisher for Unreal. So they kind of had they were all in on the technology. And Epic was our partner in making that happen. And they liked the license. They wanted Wheel of Time. So we were all cool with that. So we made that game. And then I came back to that premise because I really liked it. And I was wondering, is there another game there? Is there something else I could do with it? And I realized it wasn't a game. It was a story. It wasn't just a story. It was a novel. And 20 years later, I finally shipped that novel.
Wow.
But, making games is a very work-intensive career. You spend a lot of hours on that. So I really couldn't spend a ton of time on the book during that. I tried, whenever I had an opportunity. So part of it was I just didn't have the bandwidth to be able to work on it.
Mm-hmm.
But I also really needed to understand how to write a book. And so I did a lot of learning. I did a lot of thinking about the world. And I finally got, at the end of that process, I got feedback from someone that I had never heard before. And it was kind of serendipity. I accidentally sent her, I was trying to send it to somebody else, and I accidentally sent it to her. And she said, well, I believe in serendipity. I'm going to read this, and then I'm going to give you my feedback. And she did, and it was eye-opening. And it really helped me. And that it also gave me the fact that someone was telling me where it needed to be changed. I took a lot of momentum from that. And so I was able to start making a few drafts.
The golden rule to authors: listen to the feedback.
Oh yeah.
Well, actually,
Absolutely.
I would say you have to take one step before that. The golden rule for authors, and in fact, any creative endeavor, allow yourself to suck. What you're writing is not going to be what you end up shipping, but you can't make it better. You can't iterate until it exists. So as like Neil Gaiman said, your first draft is pretty much your outline. Your second draft is what the first draft would have been if you understood what you were writing. And then you start iterating to the point where you can actually show somebody.
Yeah.
So I actually teach a class of game design or used to teach a class of game design at UC Berkeley. And that's one of the first things I would tell my students is just allow yourself, just give yourself permission to make the worst possible design.
Now, our question about, are you self-published, traditionally published? Tell us about that.
So I am self-published. I had no idea what I was getting into. So in fact, I actually signed a contract with a small press. And I was really happy about that until I wasn't. So it was like they had me sort of on their back burner for like a year, and they were not giving me any attention. They didn't. I couldn't figure out how to make forward progress with them. And they were a small press, so they didn't have like a lot of infrastructure for that. But during that year, I sort of figured out what I needed to do in order to promote myself, in order to actually format things, just all the stuff that I had no idea. And then at the end, right as I was about to think about launching the first book, COVID hit. And when that happened, the small press said, you know what? We are changing our business model. We are no longer doing print books. It's all going to be ebooks. And I said, I'm not signing. I did not sign up for that. What I signed up for is being able to sign my book and hand it to somebody because, regardless of whatever money there is to be made out there, that experience is one of the reasons I do this. And so I said, okay, I'm gone. I don't need that anymore. And in fact, I'm really glad that I'm not with a press right now, because if I start engaging in those contract negotiations for my rights, either for movie, TV, or games, there's no one between me and the people that I need to talk to. Especially if they're not bringing anything to the table, and a lot of the small presses don't.
Right.
So anyway, I am self-published, and so far, I'm really happy that that's the way I went.
Well, it sounds like so far so good. By far, I mean, you're bringing in awards, and the awards you're bringing in are quite well-known, prestigious awards. And receiving those awards means your peers are reading your product, your creation, and it's like getting Game of the Year at the Annie Awards for gamers. I mean, it really shows that you did something. But now you were talking about the Chronicles of Chaos, and you're talking about Chaos is locked up in this temple vault, correct?
I call it the vault.
Okay, the vault. I don't want to talk too much about it because I don't want to give it away, because the final book just got released. So talk a little bit about the character development. I mean, who is the hero of the book? Is there a hero figure in this book?
Yes. So the hero for most of the books is Galen. He's a kid he's drawn to chaos. He doesn't know it, but that's sort of what he's all about. He's really creative in a world that doesn't like that, because the world is controlled by order, and order likes everything to be the same, not changing. And the people who are drawn to chaos are the visionaries. They're the ones who can actually see something that doesn't exist and make changes. And chaos and order wants to shut that down. So anybody that finds themselves drawn, there's what's called a longing. And so if you have this attachment to a specific god, there's all sorts of them: charity, law, war, all of them. So all of these people are finding themselves drawn to these temples, and then they join the temple if they have that longing. And they test for the longing to make sure that you are actually supposed to be there. But if you have this longing for chaos, you end up in this cave with all these statues of the gods sort of guarding it, and then one high priest who's there to make sure that you don't leave. And I will say, that setup is not the setup for the whole series. It's only the setup for that book. And I blow up the world at the end of that book.
Nice.
And I didn't know that it wasn't going to be a one-shot. I thought I was just going to write one book and that was it. That's why I'm the world. And that's one of the reasons I wrote the prequel, is because I really like the world. I really like the characters. And I wanted to stick around. So I wrote the prequel. But then all the thinking that I had done in those two books showed me the way forward. And I think it gets even more interesting after the world blows up.
See, I think that's really cool when you think you got your story. You start off with one book, and I'm just going to write one book,
Right.
and now you've got 5, and it's just it's that tells I think that's a self testament to your creativity, but also more importantly to the story.
And I will say the way that I work is I didn't at least figure out what my epic story was going to be, and it probably would have been good if I had, but every book is its own story. It has its own climax, a huge climax, world-shaking consequences. You feel like you've had a whole experience. There's a cliffhanger, but it's only the little thing I put at the end, little coat at the end.
Yeah.
But you'll appreciate every book for itself.
Now, what's your approximate page count or word count per book?
I'm about, I think the first one was about 116,000 words.
Okay.
Game of War was my shortest at around 100,000, and then I've been about 120. It's long for YA, but I didn't even really know that I was writing YA at first. It just
not really. I mean, if you actually take a look at the other books out there, I mean, my daughters, I have a 22-year-old and I have an 18-year-old. They've been avid readers all their life, and I can't tell you the series that they have read where they've been bringing out books that were 600, 700 pages.
Are they YA?
And they're YA because that's what they were really pulled into.
So that usually you don't see page counts like that unless it's just pure epic fantasy.
Yeah,
epic fantasy can be
some of it might have been, but I'm pretty sure some of it was YA, especially when they were in their 12, 13 years old, because we were pretty careful about what they read back then. But
for a while there was no YA. There just was books that kids read. But I've seen sort of the standardized guidelines for YA are around 70,000.
75. Yeah. Yep.
But I don't care. Because this is the story that I want to tell. These are the amount of pages that it takes to
bingo tell. Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, like I used to tell authors all the time, is don't try for a page count or word count. Let the story dictate it.
Exactly. And because I don't have an editor, well, I do have an editor, but I have an editor that I'm paying. I don't have an editor that the publisher is paying. So I don't have anyone telling me how, well, we don't want to print this many pages, so you need to keep your word count under a certain amount.
Gotcha.
It's all on me. I'm my own boss, so I figured this is the product as perfect as I can make it.
But got a question for you. Scott Mulder says, "Are you going to WizardCon?" Now, I don't know if you know what WizardCon is.
I've heard of it, but I've not got. Where is it?
WizardCon is here in Michigan. It's a game convention that we're putting on. We have not. I have not brought it up to Glenn. So, Scott, not yet. I believe you're from California.
Yes, I'm in California.
Okay, so it'll definitely be a haul for you, but I'll send you information on it most definitely because I'd love to have you.
I am excited about doing conventions. I have done none. I've done plenty of signings. Here's the deal. So I go to Barnes and Noble and I go to Half Price Books. And when I say Half Price Books, people say, well, is that a used bookstore? What are you going to do there? But I found out I'm actually doing the same numbers at Half Price Books as I am at Barnes and Noble. And the thing about Half Price Books is they let the author sell directly to the customer. So I make all the money. Barnes and Noble takes a cut right off the top. And it's, it's still worth it doing at Barnes and Noble because you get to be Barnes and Noble. But those half price books, those are really awesome, especially around the holidays.
Now,
the position that I have taken is, if I'm at a con or I'm at a seller's, room with a bunch of other people, first of all, I'm competing with them for the people's money and their interest and their time. Whereas if I'm doing a signing in a bookstore, I'm not competing with anybody. I'm the only show in town. And if I'm doing half price books, they don't charge me anything to be there. Well, neither does Barnes and Noble. They don't charge you for a booth, but they do take their cut. But half price books, there's no outlay, and all I'm doing is pure profit. So it's hard for myself to make that leap. Like, well, I should pay $200 or whatever a booth is, or more at some of the bigger cons.
Right.
And then I have to fight for attention. So I want to do it, but it needs to be special. It needs to especially because the ROI traveling outside the Bay Area is significant.
Yes,
So
it is.
money is not the easiest thing in the world to do.
And for those who don't know, go ahead, Eric. Sorry.
I would say, you have a personality that would do well at conventions. All right, I go to a lot, and I go to a lot. I used to work with Frog God Games and run their booth. And to get people to your booth, you have to be personable, you have to be approachable, and you have to have a great pitch. And I do another live stream on Wednesday nights with Jim Kitchen and Bad Mike from North Texas RPG Con. And Jim Kitchen, huge history in RPGs and with Games Workshop. And when we bring on guests, especially people that are creatives, he's like, give me that 3-minute elevator pitch. I want to hear your pitch. And you've got the best pitch that I've heard of anybody we've brought on.
Yep.
Wow,
It
thank
doesn't
you.
sound canned. Okay? It sounds passionate. So you, if you were at a convention, are going to stand out. I think you'd also be somebody that if you hung out after the normal, 10 to 6 at your booth, and you went to the hotel bar and hung out, you would have crowds form around you, just not to hear your pitch, but to hear you talk about what you're passionate about.
He could hold.
You could hold court.
That's the goal.
I've seen creatives literally hold court at conventions, and it's based upon the ability to present yourself. You have it. So don't sell yourself short that you're going to get lost in the mix. Trust me, most people who are running booths at conventions are just praying that somebody's going to walk up and look at their stuff. You have a personality that's going to draw people in.
I appreciate that. I get that a lot from the managers of the bookstores because they say a lot of the people that they have in doing signings, they sit there, they look at their phone, and they sell maybe 5 books.
Right.
I situate myself right by the entrance. As soon as someone comes by, I say, "Would you like a free bookmark?" Everybody says yes. I give them a bookmark, and then I say, "Do you like fantasy books?" And a lot of the times they say yes. And I say, "Well, then we need to have a conversation." And then I immediately go into my pitch. And then, as I said, 50% of the times we're selling. We just sold in one Barnes & Noble. It's a really good location. We sold 93 books that day.
Nice.
And that's, I see other people who are successful at this selling like 30 books. I think we're doing pretty well.
Oh, yeah.
I think your pitch could suck. But you have Piers Anthony. And that Piers Anthony quote makes me go, I might need to read this.
Well, Piers Anthony. There's a lot of people. Most people don't know him anymore. So I have to just sort of explain, he was a big deal back in the day.
Mm-hmm. Kim Winston says, plus, if you go to cons, you got a chance someone will show up with a copy of Deathgate to sign.
That is true.
Now, and the thing is, keep in mind one thing, Glenn. People that go to gaming conventions tend to like fantasy sci-fi. They tend to be very fantasy sci-fi centric. So
Absolutely.
You already have a very closeted clientele, potentially. And at a game, I go to a Barnes & Noble, I'm not going there specifically maybe to buy something. Maybe I'm wandering, maybe killing some time.
Chances are you're there to get Starbucks.
Maybe. But real quick, disclaimer, my daughter's a manager at the local Starbucks, so I don't buy anything at Starbucks. I'm lucky. But the thing is people who go to a gaming convention, they tend to bring money because they're going there to play games and buy.
They're going to hit the dealer room.
They hit the dealer room. Absolutely they do. So it's not I'm not pitching WizardCon, but there is North Texas RPG Con ran by Bad Mike and crew. There is TotalCon. There is GaryCon. I mean, there's a whole slew of conventions out there, and Eric can throw a few more at you.
Yeah.
There's got to be conventions in California.
There's got to be.
FanX is just happening now, I think, and if I had known about it ahead of time, an author friend of mine keeps inviting me to the FanX in Salt Lake City, which I want to do because he has this like super booth where he has 12 different authors all signing, and I actually wrote a story. I wrote this story for his anthology that they released at FanX. I didn't realize there was one in San Francisco. If I had, I might have looked into it. I'm just at the beginning. I'm at the beginning of my sort of author career. I'm only about 5 years into it, but I'm really at the beginning of sort of branching out outside of. The problem is the Bay Area is so target rich with places that I can go to sign that I almost don't need to move outside of that.
But really, you do need to go outside of there, because the idea is you want to expand outside. And this is just me and my putting my publisher hat on, is you definitely want to expand outside the Bay Area, because I mean, just in the gaming convention sphere, I mean, books are right up people's alleys on that. Because a book. I mean, what's the retail on your books?
So the paperbacks are $19.99. The hardbacks are $32.99. And actually, here's the pitch: if you go to my website and you buy the whole series, you get 15% off the whole thing. So it's almost like getting a free book.
Now, are they 6x9 or 5.5 by 7.5? What are 6x9s? Okay, yeah. So they're standard paperback industry size. Yeah. So hey, $19.99. That's a good price. I mean, that's really right down the average. I mean, for what a good novel, about 120,000.
I mean, when we get into the holiday season, that a lot of people aren't necessarily buying for themselves. Getting a book signed by the author for someone that they love, that they know loves fantasy but hasn't necessarily read the series, and they know it's good. I mean, it's got a bunch of awards. There's no better gift, and so we tend to do really well. In fact, this weekend we're going to be in Roseville, in Sacramento, and I don't know. I mean, I just found out like within the last few months how big that place is. That's where like national bestsellers go to launch their books. So nice. I'm really looking forward to this. Right on the weekend before Thanksgiving, that's where we're going to be, and I'm bringing like double the amount of books I normally bring.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Yeah.
Nice, really nice. Gonna branch into something a little different for you. Harper Collins. What? I want to talk a little bit about something Harper Collins is doing with authors, and I'd like to get your feedback as an author. And I'm not getting into an AI debate, okay? Because in the gaming sphere, in general, AI has a brick wall between it. I mean, either you are pro-AI or you are anti-AI, and there are very few people balancing themselves on the top of that brick wall.
Right.
But Eric, maybe you can explain a little bit better what happened with HarperCollins and such.
Well, HarperCollins now it's an opt-in for non-fiction authors at the moment to opt in their works. Apparently, the numbers that the article said, I think, was $2,500 for access to one of your works to feed their AI.
To one of your works.
One of your works. It's a one-time.
What are they getting for that from that one work?
They are getting to add. AI is powered by generally scraping the internet.
Right.
For this way, they're doing it legitimately. I'll use quotations with that.
On the up and up.
On the up and up. They're saying, hey, we're paying for the access.
Right.
And at the moment, again, it's weird because the article talks about somebody who writes child fiction, yet they also state that they're only going for non-fiction authors at the moment.
Well, that's why.
And backlisted titles only.
Yeah.
Okay, but that's why I asked the question: what are they looking for? For nonfiction, it's like, are they looking for style? Are they looking for like your literary approach, or are they looking for the facts? For the facts, that's one thing.
Right.
One title is not going to get them all the facts in the world.
Well, I think what they're doing, Glenn, is I think they're taking all of the information in the manuscript and they're installing it into these AI scrapers. And I don't know if you know how AI works. From what I've researched a little bit, so what they're doing is they're trying to feed these databases. Yeah. And my questions, I came up with a whole bunch. I said, they want to sell only backlisted titles. Okay, I know why they're doing that, because they're not wanting to step on anyone's current IP,
right?
Quote unquote current IP. But why are they wanting to submit only nonfiction? That's a big one with me.
And well, not only that, they're not even telling you which AI company you're licensing your work to.
Right.
Exactly.
They're the middleman, but they're not telling you who's the ultimate licenser.
Because I do contract cover work for HarperCollins and also contract cover work for Del Rey. And I'll guarantee before Glen Del Rey died, he'd be turning over his grave right now over this shit. But my liaison at HarperCollins, I asked her directly, who's the AI company?
Right.
And she's like, we can't say.
That's
So
important.
that's a big one to me.
That's kind of sketchy.
Well, it's like
the reason that I ask that particular question is they have to lay out what they're getting it for, right? I mean, I understand that that's the way these models work. That's the way these AI systems work. They absorb that information, but they're getting like style. They're getting your approach to the storytelling. Yep. Or nonfiction, but I'm guessing they're getting facts out of nonfiction. But if they're only getting one, what are they getting? Can they now generate a book in the style of X, in the style of that person? And that's what I'm not excited about. If they only get one of my books, suddenly, I had a kid who knew about AI, and he bought one book, and I hadn't released the finale yet of the series. He's like, I'm just going to feed all this into AI and have it write me a finale. I'm like, what the hell? No, you're not going to do that.
Well, see, that's what I think they're doing. Is I think they're looking for style and tone and tempo, because I think what's coming down the pipe, and I think that this has been going on in movies for a long time with these more realistic cartoon-like animated movies, is they're looking, I think, to, instead of having to take Glen Dahlgren and say, we'll option your series for X amount of dollars, they say, tell you what we're going to do. We want your world. We want your information. We'll give you a licensing fee, and we'll write all the books using it. That's what I think is currently.
I don't know that you want to do that, because
hell no, I wouldn't.
Writing, and it sucks.
Yeah, Kim Winston says for non, they're probably trying to reduce the amount of hallucinations in the AI.
Yeah.
And then Kim goes on and says, currently the biggest area of scrutiny lots of consultants are using to test AI is seeing how often it hallucinates and provides clearly ridiculous answers to simple questions. Yes. Yeah. That's probably a big reason why they're doing it.
Or answers where it tells the questioner to kill himself.
Yeah.
Well, you can approach an AI and say, hey, I told the AI to write a Shakespearean love sonnet in the style of Shakespeare, and it wrote one, and I'm reading it going, well, this really does feel like Shakespeare. And then I read it to my wife, and she was all like, oh, and then I admitted it was AI, and then she never you can get stuff written in somebody's style. So then, next thing you know, I could say, write me a D&D adventure in the style of Glen Dahlgren. And it would spit it out, because it's got your material in the training data.
My son is going to CSU East Bay currently. He's in his junior year. And what I didn't realize is ChatGPT has become sort of incorporated into the whole environment there, the learning environment. Because they have to tell you what you are allowed to use it and what you're not allowed to use it for. And what I found out is when you are learning how to code, he's actually an artist, but one of those classes has him coding. The ChatGPT ends up being a TA. So it will debug your program for you and let you know alternative ways to do what you're doing.
Is it really how accurate can that be?
It is very accurate. It is really smart about what it's producing. And it will write code that works. I don't know if it's worthwhile getting a degree in CS anymore.
That's interesting, because that's not creativity the way fantasy or writing or art is. This is literally dealing with numbers, and numbers have repetition.
Although some people would tell you there is creativity in coding.
I'm not saying there isn't, but I'm saying it's something that is more AI focused, something that AI, I almost want to say instinctually has a better grasp of, because it's not trying to understand the human mind and emotions.
You don't necessarily need a soul to write code.
Right. It doesn't need a soul. It can be robotic writing that out, and it doesn't.
It either works or it doesn't. Fiction is very different.
That's going to be the quote of the night. Doesn't need a soul to write code.
There you go. I like that.
I'm not saying that people who write code don't have souls, though.
David Floor is somewhere in here sitting there going, Kim says generative AI is actually reasonably good at suggesting fixes to code, because code has hard rules. True.
And I know, and I also, so Mike Verdu, again, the guy who was the studio head at Legend and is now at Netflix, He is focused on using generative AI to enhance productivity. So I guess you have a smaller team working with AI to generate assets for games. I guess I'm not entirely sure. I mean, honestly, if I was doing that, I would want generative AI to be fast enough to be able to generate assets on the fly. Because what that maybe can do is allow the player to have more influence in the experience. Because I love the idea. I've never been about player generated content, but I love the idea of player influence content. So you are using the tools inside the game to make something and invest yourself in it. It's a lot of designs that I have made have been sort of along those lines. Because
I wonder if people are using it to make skins or make their own environments, like in Unreal.
Well, actually, Unreal, the editor, has some of those tools. So you can say, this is a forest, build it out. And it will do that. And so you don't need an artist to go in and place every tree or, do all that stuff. And it does help a lot.
Well, when you say player influenced content, that's almost like a dungeon master, because as the players do things I don't expect, I go, that's a cool idea. We're going to roll with that. And I love when the players, totally mess up my adventure. I've had adventures where, the bad guy was supposed to get away because there's a part 2 and they shoot his air car out of the sky with one lucky shot with a laser and it goes crashing down and burning. And, I was like, well, all right, we're going to roll with this. This was cool that he did that one aim shot and got it. And it was just blew up my whole adventure. And I just think that's great when the adventure does not survive the player characters. And so this sounds like using generative AI as a DM to do stuff on the fly, which, again, I've been a proponent against AI, particularly because of the abuse of artists.
Right.
So I'm like, geez, this.
What you're talking about is interactive storytelling. And that has been sort of the holy grail inside adventure gaming for decades. In fact, Chris Crawford came up with a thing that he never got to work called the Erasmatron, I think. It was all about interactive storytelling, trying to figure out the nuggets of story and be able to put them together in different ways to allow the player to form his own story. The example that everybody gives is a grandpa telling a story to his grandson, going to try to put him to sleep. And he says, okay, so there was a forest. And said, I don't want it to be a forest. I want it to be a city. Okay, so there was a city and there was this woman. No, I want it to be a man. Okay, so it was a man. The player is actually making the story as much as the storyteller is. And so, now it was probably the best time in history where something like that could actually happen.
Yeah. I would almost prefer a Peter Falk Princess Bride type of.
Well, I mean, nothing will take the place of a DM right now, right? DM is human. He understands.
Watsy's trying to.
Yeah.
And he understands what they want out of it. And so he is able to deliver that story, that experience, knowing his audience.
And also the other thing is that when you've got a group of friends, you get to know these people and you start to have this shared, jokes and shared shorthand.
Exactly.
And you'll say things, and so it becomes part of that too. And you're not going to get that with the generative AI at this point, I don't think.
I would say that probably a huge draw of playing in a gaming group is knowing that DM and what he can make and looking forward to what he comes up with, not just AI 3, what it's going to spew out, because, playing a role-playing game, online or whatever is not the same thing as having someone you know and trust making an experience for you. And actually that goes back to something I always say, which is it's all about the player giving me their trust. Because I've played games where they have broken my trust. They have given me puzzles that just don't work, are not logical, and make me want to throw the disc against the wall. Once you've broken my trust, you're done. I'm not playing your game anymore. But if I can convince you that you've put your faith in me because I am taking care of your experience, I am protecting your experience, then you know you're going to have a good time.
Yeah, and Fugly says something that I think that when that day happens, it'll be a very sad day indeed for gaming and for players. He says there will become a day that players will never have known the live interaction of a DM.
Yeah, I don't think that's true.
You go to a convention and you sit in a game with, like I've sat in with Eric's games at conventions down at ShireCon, and you sit in and it's just magical. It's just magical sitting in a game. And even a game I didn't like, there was some weird West game Tammy and I sat in on. We had fun, even though I decided about 10 minutes into this process, I didn't like the game. 400-page rule book and
no, it's bigger than that. We're talking about Weird Frontiers. It's about 850 pages.
Wow.
When it went to print on demand, they had to break it into 2 volumes because they couldn't do a POD that size.
Had fun. I had fun. We had a great time. Tammy did some unusual things with the stuff on her character sheet. Great time. I hated the game, but I still had fun, and I enjoyed the other players at the table and the jokes. There was joking, and it was just
the human element. You really enjoyed the human element.
Yeah. And you can't get that with AI.
Not yet.
Now, Glenn, you're an hour. Learned a lot of really great stuff about publishing from you, the writing process, your books. What's next for Glenn?
Yeah.
So I've actually continued to work designing. Actually, my last project was the metaverse version of Sephora, believe it or not. So I occasionally, freelance doing design. There's another game coming up that I might be involved with. Depends on if he gets the financing. I don't know. But the one thing I do know about is the books that I'm writing. So you were right in identifying The Realm of Gods as the finale to the series. I wrote it to be the finale. It's an awesome conclusion. Brings a lot of the threads to their conclusion. But every single review that I got said, "I love it, but I want more." So I said, you know what? I agree. I actually kind of set the stage a little bit with the last line in that book. I left the door open for myself, but I knew, I spent 25 years in this world with these characters, and I love them too much to let them go. So I am writing a sequel series. It's 7 years after the events of the last book, but with many of the same people in the same world. And we get to find out what happens next. And I'm about 15,000 words into it, and I'm having a blast.
Nice.
Excellent.
Nice.
Well, Glenn, you know what? We really appreciate you coming on. You are the type of host that we really like to have. We could have a host every week like that. This channel would be blown up with subscribers by now.
Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate you having me on. I didn't know about you guys until I saw Jolly posting about the interview you did not too long ago.
Against Whitman? With Whitman?
Yes. Yeah, I heard some of the things from Jolly's perspective about what happened there, and so I was really interested to see, what he had to say for himself about that. So that's how I got.
Well, hopefully he talked favorably about us. So.
Well, I didn't speak to Jolly, but I just saw your show, and so
okay, good deal. Good deal.
Yeah. But actually, that connection is really interesting because, Knights of the Dinner Table I've been a big fan for a long time. They
did a review of your books.
So so I sent my first book in to Jolly, hoping that, maybe he would take a look at it. He gave it to Barbara, and Barbara has reviewed every single book since.
Nice.
I think I'm not talking out of turn. She fell in love with the books. They really speak to her. And so every book that's come out, I can't wait to see her reviews of them. And I don't know any other book that has had like every book in the series reviewed in the pages of Knights of the Dinner Table. So that's kind of cool. But yeah, she's like the first manuscript that goes out is going to Barbara.
Nice.
So,
Nice.
so yeah, I really anyway. That's how I found out about you guys. Is the
Good deal. Well, you know what? Again, we appreciate you coming on.
You see,
good.
Ken Whitman was good for something.
True. That's true. Eric, you're going to have to eat your words on that. You got to agree. Ken was good for that, at least.
Listen, I didn't rip Ken's head off. I was, the cop in me came out, I got to admit, but, I was well behaved.
Honestly, the way you guys interacted with him convinced me that it was a show that I wanted to come on.
Thank you.
You had the right perspective.
We try to be straightforward. We try to sit there, have fun, but at the same time, sometimes, like with him, you sometimes just
call
have to
it out. You just
yeah. Well, again, Glenn, thank you for coming on. We will be on again. Next Thursday we will not be on because next Thursday is Turkey Day.
Oh yes, Thanksgiving.
Yep.
Oh,
so, Eric, are you still having your midweek?
Hang out right after this. Yep, on Discord.
But are you doing your Wednesday?
Oh,
next week?
Oh yeah, we're doing Wednesday. We're doing listen.
Got you. Gamers Health on Saturday.
What's that?
Gamers Health on Saturday.
Gamers Health. Oh, definitely.
Okay. Well, Turkey Day, the vlog of many things takes a hit. So we end on at least the last show before the holidays ends on a positive note. We had you on, Glenn. Thank you very much. You've been an excellent guest.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Everybody watching, hope you guys have a really good Thanksgiving. For those of you who don't celebrate, have a good Thursday night. But I personally will probably be in food coma.
Yep. Grab my books. Go
to
Ethereum.blog.
Yep. GlenDahlgren.home.blog. Go ahead and do that. If you go to the Vlog of Many Things Facebook, I'm going to put a link to Glenn's website also. And also, I will add that link to the comments section of this video right after we are done.
Awesome.
So,
thank you so much again for having me on. It was a pleasure. I really enjoyed chatting with you.
Excellent. Glenn, have a good night.
Keep me in mind. Keep me in mind for conventions.
Sure.
I'll get there. My interest is peaked.
Good deal. We'll kind of put together. Maybe we'll get together and maybe get ShireCon info, TotalCon. All the various get all the info for you.
You want to go to WizardCon because Sigourney Weaver's showing up by video.
By video.
North Texas is about 450 people with very deep pockets. How do I know they have deep pockets? I've worked the booth and I've watched the auctions. There are some very deep-pocketed people in the gaming community that go to certain conventions. GaryCon and Gamehole. Those are up in Wisconsin.
Right.
Yeah.
Doesn't Satan show up and
Satan shows up at North Texas for the midnight auction.
Yeah.
You might have to get ID'd before you go in there just to make sure.
It's really bad, Mike, but he shows up.
Yeah. Not quite debauchery, but
close.
Yeah.
All right, guys, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for tuning in. Again, everybody have a good Thanksgiving. We will see you the week thereafter.
Yep.
Thanks so much.
Thank you very much.